Hello everybody, welcome to your Wednesday edition, Hump Day edition of the TraderMerlin Show. My name is Merlin Rothfeld and I hope to entertain you and educate you today. Many of you didn't get the chance to attend the event that I did with Todd Jacobson, Larry Davis, and Darren Komodo up in Downey a couple weeks back. I know Chio was there. And one of the questions that came up out of the audience, which I thought was great, was, what do you see as a Black Swan event? And I think the right answer was done by most is, I don't know. I mean, a Black Swan, that's the whole point of a Black Swan event, is something you just didn't see coming. Of course, the pandemic being one of those. I guess the flash crash was another example of that. And I thought about it and said, okay, if I look at the spectrum of things going on in the world, what's that outlier that's people going, there's no way that's going to happen. But if it did, after the fact, they could go, well, yeah, I saw that coming. So what do I mean by that? Well, I made the point a while back that NVIDIA made a statement that they get 90+% of their chips from Taiwan Semiconductor. And I thought, wow, that gives Taiwan Semiconductor a lot of power. As we can check by TSM's chart here, and we're going to talk a lot about semiconductors today. Here is Taiwan Semiconductor on a 5-minute basis, but let's just go look at the daily to show you what the world's largest semiconductor company looks like. We keep going back and referencing those lows from last October. And like, wow, the market's up 20, 30%, depends which market we're looking at. Well, from those October 23rd lows, which is right about there, to the peak, semiconductors companies like Taiwan Semiconductor up 127%. Very interesting. Okay, so why is this doing so much better in the market? It's because everyone right now is rushing to get into anything with AI. It's the new buzzword. It's the equivalent of the dot-com back in the 90s. So no surprise there that this segment is surging. However, the dot-com bubble at the time was one of those things where you go, okay, what's it actually do? Does it have prospects for the future? Great. But a lot of riffraff popped up. That's harder to do with chip makers, right? If you're looking for the pieces that make up AI and will help grow AI going forward, you need chip makers. So NVIDIA, it gets 90% of their chips from this company right here, Taiwan Semiconductor. Now, of course, Taiwan Semiconductor is making the basic building blocks, but you look at NVIDIA, they are recompiling them and making devices that utilize those chips in a very specific way, thus making them very valuable. What's interesting is the president's side of things and how politics always steers this discussion. President Biden has said that NVIDIA can't sell the A100 or H100 chips to China or to the Middle East, or to, I know it's China, maybe it was India or Middle East, because they're worried about intellectual property being stolen. And I thought, well, this seems kind of crazy. So you have Taiwan Semiconductor selling chips to the United States, and then the United States saying, hey, once we rework these chips and put them in a special way, you can't sell those devices back to China. Now put yourself in China's shoes. First off, anybody here who's Taiwanese will tell you, hey, you know what? Taiwan's its own sovereign country. We're Taiwan. We're not China. Then you go to anybody who's Chinese and they say, well, Taiwan's ours. That little island over there, that belongs to us. So you have this feud between the Taiwanese and China saying, hey, Taiwan is sovereign. No, it's part of China. We have warships right now from China circling around Taiwan, as well as warships from the United States circling around Taiwan. And I thought, wow, what would it look like if China came out and said, okay, screw you, Biden and the United States. You have said that you can't send these chips to China, these processors, A100 by NVIDIA. All right, fine. Then we're not going to let Taiwan Semiconductor send chips to you. Now, that has not happened. And I propose that as my hypothesis for what's the next Black Swan. It's something that I could see as in the realm of possibility. Of course, we know that would be catastrophic financially, not only for the United States, but for global communities, particularly China, because I think it would start World War III. Now, people go, oh, that's not possible. It's not going to happen, right? That came up at the venue. Said, no, it just wouldn't work. I know it wouldn't work, but we keep growing this tit-for-tat argument of, well, you can send these chips, you can't send those chips. It could very easily come where China says, no, we're not going to allow Taiwan to send those chips. Taiwan says we're going to do it anyway, and then a war will escalate. Or China says you can't send those chips. Taiwan agrees, and the U.S. goes in and says, no, you're sending us those chips because we need it. Either way, there's a problem with those chips. So to me, that's the big Black Swan potential that I see. That's kind of an obvious one. I say obvious. There's nothing really obvious about it, but it's a Black Swan event I look at and say, this is a possibility. All right, so why do I have this graphic here? Chip wars with an exploding semiconductor over there on a nice little circuit board. it's not that I think this is going to happen. I think that this is most likely going to come to some head, but not the full escalation where we go to war over it, because obviously both economies would suffer dramatically if that were to happen. However, you have comments by President Trump. How am I supposed to refer to the guy? Is it President Trump or is it former President Trump? Well, I'll say former President Trump because he's not the president now. So you have comments made today by former President Trump saying, Taiwan should be paying for U.S. protection over there because we have warships, again, circling and not necessarily protecting, just being there to kind of make sure things go okay. So Trump made that comment, and all of a sudden today you saw chips sell off dramatically. And it wasn't just Taiwan Semiconductor, it was across the board. I'll bring up a whole bunch of other ones along the way. You guys really like the shirt today. Believe it or not, Margaret, I'm a frugal person. If I'm the type of person, you'll never see me in a Dolce & Gabbana, Fendi, or anything really high-end unless I get it at the most smoking deal on the planet. I find it really annoying when I see people with $3,000 purses and $2,000 shoes. I can get that same shoe, much better quality for $100. Fool. Anyway, I got this at Five Below. This is a $5 shirt. I'm a big fan of Run DMC. I remember I was given a cassette tape in 1986 from Aaron Dervin, one of my good friends from school, who is now a lawyer in Sacramento. She gave me a tape. On one side had License to Ill by Beastie Boys, and on the other side had Raising Hell, I think, by Run DMC. That was a life-changing cassette, I will tell you that. Anyway, Five Below, which if you look at the stock chart, it looks like one that Micah would pick. We'll look at that one here in a little bit. Steve says, I believe that 90% of the chips used in the U.S. will be made there. Not for another couple years. So these factories are starting to be built. I want to do more research into understanding exactly where these factories are. I know there's one in Arizona. I hear that there's other companies coming into play, other semiconductor companies being built in the U.S., but you can't say it's going to happen in the U.S. It's going to take years, absolutely years, not only for those buildings to be built, but all the infrastructure to be built out and actually get that assembly line and production facility going. That will take at least 2 years. From the numbers I've heard, it's 4 years. So we still have a ways to go before we get to that point where those chips are being manufactured in the United States. Yes, there'll be a Taiwan Semiconductor, probably a couple different plants in the U.S., but one of the challenges I see there is our salaries, our cost of living in the United States is much more expensive than it would be in an Asian country. Now, Taiwan is a bit more expensive than China, but still, I believe a chip manufactured in China is going to have less labor cost input. Therefore, the chips are cheaper from there, whereas if we make them here in the United States, we have a lot of other overhead and costs that's going to add on to those chips, and they will be much more expensive. Therefore, I think businesses will still be inclined to use foreign chips as long as they are of the same caliber. All right. Let's see. Arizona is 5 years away from right, Steve. And again, it sounds great. Honestly, I wish that this would have happened years ago. Or I think we should absolutely have looked at this and said we can't keep being dependent on electronic components coming from Asia. Just doesn't make sense. So let's look. Let's look a little bit at. You love Run DMC and Beastie Boys. Nice, love it, Lisa. Good. Rest in peace. Oh, man, I had tickets twice to see the Beastie Boys, and both times I'm like, I'll go next time, and now I regret it. All right, so let me look at some of these chip makers, because I think that, part of the reason we saw this big drop today, not only, the NASDAQ, obviously, with a giant decline of close to 3%, of course, I say about time, the other indexes actually held up rather well. Why? Because this is a tech-based issue. This is something that's going to impact pretty much every aspect of technology if we have a chip war. So let's run through some of them here just to give you an idea of what this looked like on the grand scheme of things for chip makers. Now, if we look at something like SMH, right? SMH is one of the bigger semiconductor holding ETFs. So there's many of them out there, but SMH is a pretty big one. So if you are ever thinking about buying into chip makers and semiconductors, you could certainly look at SMH as a holding as opposed to buying one. I believe there's like 30 or 40 different components in SMH. I won't run through them all here. Actually, it's not 30 or 40. It's probably like 20. But you get a diversified holding portfolio. The number one component in that, no surprise, NVIDIA, which on the day was down 6.62%. It's actually had a nice 5-day slide that's significantly higher than that. I had this 20% drop-off mapped out here. It looks like we're headed there. 112 target's looking pretty good. I saw in the comment here earlier that there was a Kenny Say you picked up, sold some premium on NVIDIA today on puts. I was looking at it as well. I'm just not quite sure I'm going to jump on it yet. I mean, I'm being a little bit more cautious in this market just because of the political stuff and just trying to be a little more cautious. I do think you'll see this drift a little bit further lower. And if I can get down maybe that 102, 110 mark, I might take the same stab at it that you did, Kenny, and look to sell some puts there and collect some premium on this bad book because I think there will be lower prices ahead. So that was your big sell-off component today. Obviously, 6.62% is going to bring SMH and the NASDAQ down since it's one of the top components. In the last 4 sessions, we're looking at a 14% slide in NVIDIA by itself. But we talked about TSM. Now, if Donald Trump is going to go out there and say that TSM, Taiwan Semiconductor, should pay for defense, first off, let's talk about how stupid of a comment that is. Making one company responsible for the United States Armed Forces to go out there and protect Taiwan against China, that doesn't seem logical. What about making Taiwan as a country responsible for it, right? Which may be more what he meant. So, how big of a sell-off have we seen today? Well, TSM down 7.98% on the session. You're talking about almost 8% of the day. It also, last 4 sessions, down 11.51%. So, those two top components really weighing heavily on the SMH index. I believe NVIDIA is close to 20% of SMH and TSM is close to 13%, if I'm not mistaken. But we have plenty of others. You got AVGO, also felt the pinch. And this is one of those things that, you know, if you're looking for opportunity, as I am right now, looking to deploy some more capital, particularly with puts, just because I want to collect premium and kind of continue to get a nice steady rate of return, any one of these I'm going to be looking at may be a potential opportunity. What I'm looking for is not only one that's been beaten down and has fear behind it, because right now every chip maker, pretty much across the board, with maybe a couple exceptions, I know one of you is going to find that exception, every chip maker took a big ding today. Does that mean that these companies are bad and deserve to have a 6, 7, 8% haircut today? Maybe they were long overdue for a little bit of a pullback, but if we can find something that comes back into an area of demand or an area where I am interested in owning that security, then why not go for it? So we got Avgo. I actually like Broadcom, and I'm looking at some numbers here, but my number for Broadcom is still a ways away. My buy point on Broadcom would be looking to be right around that 133 mark, the origin of that big, where this big rally started here on the 4th of June. So I like AVGO. I've got a note made to myself to check that one out over the next couple of days. Me and Broadcom have a long relationship, that's for sure. All right, so that's Avgo. Number 4 in this index, AMD. Probably not going to be as impacted as much. However, it still had a 10% down day. Now, you got to be careful about their earnings. You see their earnings is going to be coming out next week. That's going to be the 30th of July. So you got to be careful with that one. But it also had a really big sell-off today. The last few days is even eclipsing what you saw with NVIDIA. It's down almost 15% in just the last 4 sessions. So while not being directly impacted by the comments by Trump, it certainly could be a buying opportunity if you find a level that you like. My only concern with something like AMD, which I like AMD, this show is run on AMD components, is the fact that we see almost every chip maker ripping to all-time highs and just having so much momentum, and AMD, really since March of this year, has been down and languishing. So while I like AMD long-term, it's kind of concerning why its chart looks so weak compared to other things. I'm going to keep going here. I'll do a few more. Now, here's one that should have zero impact. ASML. You guys know where this one's out of? This is out of the Netherlands. So you saw a 12.74% slide in ASML today, and that was because of earnings, which they did beat on earnings. They were supposed to make $4.02. They came out at $4.38. However, their forecast going forward was lower than expectations. And again, this is one of those things where I believe institutions lower those bars to make it much easier to jump over it at the next earnings announcement. If you look at this from a technical perspective, how many of you are still bullish on this price chart? Even though we've got a 12, almost 13% slide in ASML, are you still bullish? Yes or no? I guess I can make a survey, but it's just easier if you guys type in Y or N in the chat. And while you do that, I'm going to read through here. Frugal, but goes to fish concerts. Well, there's certain things, Tom, we got to splurge on. I'm sure even Tom, you, the frugal one, would have something where you're like, cost is not an issue. I'm doing it. That's what I want to do. If you look at things that have made me happy in life, going to fish concerts is probably one of the saving graces for me on this planet. I could go deeper into that one, but we'll just suffice it to say that's something that money's no object for me, as evident by my trip to Las Vegas with them. All right, so let's see. Lisa, I'm still bullish. Steve says yes, but I'm not buying. Good. Andrea says buy the dip. Everybody says yes. Ricardo, Mike LaRusso said yes. I would have to look at the weekly chart. Margaret, I'll drive that taxi for you. There's your weekly chart. So now, Margaret, I think you're going to tell me, probably going to type in a Y in that chart, right? Well, it does look ominous. I mean, this is a monstrous, ugly, ugly candle here. Hey, as Futures Trader says, long term looks good. Futures Trader says, it does look good. And it doesn't mean I'm going to buy it immediately, but I will break this down and look at it saying, all right, if I look at this from a shorter term perspective, is there a level in here that I would be comfortable right now selling puts? Now, this might be a little bit challenging. Oh, Margaret says bearish. Okay. I'm curious why, because if you look at the weekly, we haven't really, if you're calling this now your pivot low right here, if you're talking about 1,000 as being your pivot low, then, okay, I guess you could say that would be bearish. But to me, this is really the pivot. This is where we have the big move out. So if it gets down below 853, that's where I would be looking. So again, just matter of perspective, but it's okay. Everybody can have an opinion on this, and ultimately, hopefully we make money on it either way. Let's see. Steve says, if it breaks that pivot, not interested. Agreed. So that said, maybe, and I don't know what the premium will look like right now, maybe I look out here at a level like, the 855s and look to sell some puts there and collect some premium on that one, because I'm okay owning that long term. Again, they just lowered their forecast. They kind of talked about some challenges coming up in the industry, but again, chips are still in demand. And what would happen if we did go through some issues with Taiwan Semiconductor, and we did have a conflict with China with TSM? Other countries would start to pick up the slack. Now, I'm pretty sure that the chips that are sold by ASML are not the same as the ones sold by NVIDIA. TSM. However, we would find alternative sources, even though we might have to pay more and they'd have longer delays, other issues, and maybe other companies have to retool their facilities to make more chips like TSM. Whatever the demand is, that might be filled by other countries, and it could take some time. Steve says we'd be in trouble. Yeah. 680 looks good for Margaret. Let's go look at it, 680. Yeah, I would agree. You're talking way down there, though. Right, I got 697, but you're looking at this little consolidation piece right here. Either way, I like this little spinning top in between these two candles right here. They'll go back to the week of January the 2nd to January the 16th. I like that little sandwich right there where it ripped out. So I just don't think we're going to get that low. If it got down to the 630 or 680 mark, like you mentioned, well, that trend would now be broken, and I would have to reevaluate this. So to me, the 855 is the only real pertinent one right now, where I'd be looking at maybe selling some puts, collecting some premium. I'll let you know if that happens in the next couple days here, if I do decide to go that route. So again, the whole point of me doing this is to come up with a hypothesis of why this is happening at chip makers. And again, I think it's multifaceted. I think it's a long overdue pullback. I think that a lot of this is going to be political. And again, Trump's comments about Taiwan Semiconductor and Taiwan in particular, causing a little bit of a fear that if he does take over office, that there will be some changes here, and all of a sudden pressure would be put on these chip makers, so we could see more downside movement. So what about, let's look at old Intel, INTC. How's that one looking? This chart looks terrible, right? This one looks really bad. However, its trend recently has actually been looking much more positive. Right, we came out of the sideways consolidation. We broke out. That's your first indication to buy. We rallied back up to the supply zone, which it hesitated at. Now we've broken out above that. To me, it looks like this is off to the races of another potential rally here for Intel. Who knows what's driving that rally? Just keep in mind you have earnings on August 1st, so you got a couple of weeks here to get August 1st. I own Intel and it's trash. Hey, Steve, maybe you're down right now, but it's actually starting to show some positive signs of life, at least over the past 2 weeks, right? We got a 2-week move. Doesn't mean that this whole thing is going to reverse and it's off to all-time highs. Definitely not saying that. Let me go and show you the weekly time frame here. Yeah, this really looks pretty bad. It's embarrassing. Really, Intel used to be such the king of kings, but this goes back to the discussion of what's going to be driving technology going forward. Is it going to be a CPU, a central processing unit, or are we going to have like the ARM type systems where it's not just built around, the CPU is custom designed to be built around what you want. Intel just builds this chip and says, here you go, just take what you get, take what you get, take what you get. Whereas ARM's saying, hey, we'll make custom ones built off what your projects and needs are, which to me is a much better use of your space and resources on your computer. If all of you were to right now go to your control panel, and I think you can go Control-Alt-Delete. Well, don't do it now, but if you can Control-Alt-Delete and go to, I don't want to do it to ruin the show. You go to your control panel, you'll see probably 100 different applications that are running, probably more than that. And a lot of those, you don't need to be running. You're not using those services. It just runs automatically because that CPU tells it to do so. It's an archaic method, right? But that's what we got in the very beginning with those 386 systems. It's still legacy. And that's, I think, another reason that Intel or NVIDIA has been popping so much is it represents a different way to process that information. How could chip makers be up 60% and Intel be down 60%? They're trash. Correct. And again, it goes back to what the focus is, right? Intel is focused on personal computing, CPUs, right? You buy yourself a new laptop, get a tower case, and put in a new chipset. Chip makers like NVIDIA are looking, well, not only at GPU, which is a totally different ballgame, graphics processing unit, but they're also creating systems that are far more advanced for AI, right? Could do a lot more calculations, a lot more throughput, a lot more processing of information, and that's where they get their value because you're not running AI with an Intel i9 core. Not really doing much with that. You need something much more significant, and that's where these other chip makers come into play. Amoeba has not done anything. Yeah, I agree with you. Well, with that Intel, when you look at this chart again, let me just bring that up for you. There, bam, bam. You kind of had to be asking yourself in this process, I don't know when you bought it, but, until it got above this line, there's no reason to do anything with it. No reason to buy it. And you could even have lowered it as it just kind of just kept drifting lower. Maybe a calculator with an Intel chip. There you go, Steve. Well, when I was building this computer for the show, I had the choice to use Intel. And on the other side, I could use AMD. And, excuse me, the AMD Ryzen chip is for doing what I want to do for the show, which I want multi-threads. I want a lot of different processing functionality. The AMD Ryzen was a better one. So I got the Ryzen 770 here, whereas I could have gone with the Intel i9, which was more expensive and didn't have the functionality that I was looking for, at least the specifications I was looking for. So there you go. I would take AMD over Intel, and it's basically that discussion is a simple one, right? I would just bring up that daily chart, and I would say, there's Intel's chart, there's AMD. Oh, they actually look fairly similar. They both had that consolidation, but Intel is just way more beaten down. Certainly still way off its all-time high. Let's see. Lisa says, one day, hopefully not too far in the future, we will have the latest and greatest technology that will be affordable for all of us little guys, computers. Well, look, it really depends on what you want to do. So if you think of like how much it cost me to rebuild this system, it wasn't that much money. It was $550 for the motherboard, the chipset, and the RAM. I kept the same tower. I bought a different power supply, which is $100, so that's $650. And I've got a pretty robust computer. I've got 3 monitors. Now remember, I did not buy a new video card. I used my old video card, which is fine. It's a GeForce 1660, which is old but does great. At some point, I may upgrade that one. Once upon a time, Intel was king. Sure. And Margaret, this is about all businesses. You can be the king for a long time. But if you don't innovate, if you get complacent in your ways, and I think that might have been the problem with, at least from my perspective, the problem with Intel, is they said, we've got this market. We're pretty much dominant. And they made AMD look silly. Nobody wanted AMD. Intel just built that CPU and said, buy it and go with it. They didn't, I don't believe they thought in the future on how to make this better and new technology integration, maybe customization. I don't think they did that. And I think that's why they've fallen behind. All right, you've got an ad in. All right, so Steve, you say you're in at 32 on the old Intel. Okay. So you're in right at that ceiling. So you're doing okay on this breakout right now. If it was me, because I'm not a big fan of Intel, I'd be moving my stop losses up here. So you got this little tail right here that happened on the 11th of July. I would probably move my stop loss just below that, let's say 33.22, and you only make a little over $1 per share. Oh, you sold calls? Okay. What do you think on? Are you talking the symbol or the whole sector? Yeah. I don't know. I don't know this one. It's too illiquid for me anyway. You can tell the gaps in price chart. I think you're talking about the semiconductors overall. Oh, on semi. Okay, got it. That was a tough one. Are you selling covered calls or naked calls, Steve? Yeah, I got on semiconductor. Are you selling covered or naked? Either way, you have a price chart here that doesn't look that great. It's finally starting to make a little bit slightly higher high, so that's positive. What makes me uncomfortable with on, which by the way is in the SMH holdings, it represents 0.81% of SMH ETF. I look at this. You haven't done anything yet. If I was long, I would be selling calls probably that 84 level, right in this area of supply. You notice that it's rather choppy. I always talk about the trend is your friend and talk about higher highs, higher lows, etc. If you look at this one, it's been making lower highs, lower highs, lower highs, lower highs, lower highs, lower highs. And then right now, it's actually starting to make a slightly higher high. So things may have shifted a little bit, and it's starting to make a higher low. So it does feel like momentum is changing here. I would probably be okay buying on semiconductor and then selling calls against it just to collect that extra premium at 84 bucks because I don't think it's going to go shooting up there. Just keep in mind, semiconductors right now may be under a bit of pressure because of the Trump comments and overall just extended in the Trump boys in the market. Yep, sideways for this one. It doesn't look great, which fine if you're selling calls just to collect premium. Excellent. If you're selling naked calls, though, you got to be careful. I don't do that. It's just not worth the chance for me. If you're selling a call that says, I will sell it to, let's do just an example. I'm sure you all know what that means. But let's say we look at this $84 price target. And I say, all right, if it gets up there, I'll sell it. Well, if you don't own it, that means that you're on the hook to buy it at that price, no matter what. Okay, good. Just making sure, Steve. Just making sure. Hey, some people take chances like that, and let me explain what could happen here. So let's say that you sold the call at $84 and it's currently trading at 75. You're like, there's no way it's going to get to 84, blah, 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 blah. And maybe you collect, I'll just say $1 worth of premium, all right? So $1, one contract, 100 shares, that's $100 worth of premium. You collected that, and you're like, there's no way I'm going to get filled here. Well, all it would take is something like Intel or AMD or NVIDIA says they're going to buy on semiconductor. And all of a sudden, this thing's going to gap up. I mean, who knows? It could gap up to $100. And now you're on the hook to buy it at 84, which means even though you collected $1 worth of premium, you're going to be underwater by 16 bucks. And that would be a conservative estimate if they got bought by Intel or NVIDIA. Okay? Do you have an entry point for gold? Let me finish this real quick and I'll get to that market. Steve. Funny guy over there today, Steve. All right, so here's your list. I just wanted to bring this up. And again, you guys can, this is from Bar Chart. One thing I always do, and I encourage you all to do, particularly those of you who have 401ks or IRAs, is if you have a 401k and you have ETFs in there, always just type in the symbol to see what you're in. What does it hold? And you'll find a lot of overlap. You might have Microsoft and 6 or 7 different ETFs that you just didn't know about. So what's nice about the bar chart side is you type in the ticker symbol up here at the top. Let me go back to a normal screen. Type in the ticker symbol. I put SMH, hit enter. Down here in the bottom left it says constituents. You click that. These are the holdings of SMH, and you can also see the weightings in it. So when you look at something like Skyworks, SWKS, you're like, oh, it's in the SMH. It's only 0.55%. It's not that impactful. It's really these guys up here, the NVIDIA, the STM, Broadcom, Advanced AMD. Those are your big heavy hitters in this index. Okay. All right, I will leave it at that. Let me get a sip of water here real quick. Let's go on to other topics du jour. You want to know about GLD. So the only real buy point, if you look at this, where do you guys see a buy point in here? It's this rather a difficult one to look at, right? You can use all the different OTA core strategy tools and analysis pieces here. There isn't a real clear, clean-cut point to be looking to use as a demand zone. There really is only one area that, I guess there's 2 areas. It's kind of tricky. The red line, Steve says the red line. Well, I got the red line on there for a reason, and that's because it was kind of this low point. It technically should be right there, which that could work. You know, there's a lot of potential ifs. You have all of a sudden, you have this is called an abandoned baby, which this little dotted red line right here at 212. You know, you could say this breakout of consolidation right here where all of a sudden had the big move up. But those are really the first 2 points that I would be looking at will be 215, 212, and 210. And you're like, but Merlin, we're at 227. There's got to be something else. I mean, there could certainly be other ones. I just don't see anything that jumps off the chart at me personally right now. What if I go to, let's say, an hourly? Right now, all of a sudden, you have a whole bunch of different perspectives of this bad boy. You could talk about the origin of this gap right here, which is 219. I don't know if 223 would be of interest to me. The main reason I'm not interested is it's so close. I think this, you have that breakout. I think this is due for a pullback here on gold overall. Let me bring up the GLD chart here so we can see that one. Oops. All right, so here's the gold futures. And the only reason I bring this up is it shows you the pattern from what we've been looking at, which is a breakout, and now you're getting a little bit of a retest on it today. Would not surprise me if that does not hold and it keeps coming back down, and maybe we get some entry points a little bit lower. Yeah, Steve, that's a lot of gaps to fill, and unfortunately you get that with gold. You get that a lot of times with futures traded instruments, so GLD is what's a result of GC, right? So the gold futures are trading in the after-hour sessions, which is causing these gap ups all the time in gold, and you get a lot of them, kind of difficult to look at. All right. What else did you guys like to know? Merlin, Chipmakers, Black Swan, that all the presenters at down here were talking about? Well, not all of them were talking about that, Chio. Not all. I'm the only one who was talking about. Do not give credit to Larry, Todd, and Darren for talking about my idea for a Black Swan event. Remember, they were all going, I don't know. The whole point of a Black Swan is it just happens you don't know about it, right? So I was the only one that actually gave you a topic of potential. Could it happen? Look, what's the probability of that happening? I personally think you're looking at a very, 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 very slim chance. I think it could escalate a little bit, but not to the point that it turns into an all-out war, where China says TSM cannot sell any chips to America. First off, it would crush TSM. Number two, the retaliation from the United States government from a embargo perspective, we probably would shut down all kinds of stuff. We'd say, nope, this is not allowed to come from China at all. And all of a sudden, this pissing match between the U.S. and China would escalate. It would be horrible economically. And do we want that right before an election? No. No, we do not. Now, Trump is in a great position because he can posture and say all of this stuff before the election, right? He is a wonderful position right now because he can say all of these bad things that if they're implemented could be very detrimental to the economy of the United States, right? And if all of a sudden, let me give you an example. And this is the brilliance of Donald Trump. He could say something today like, if I'm elected, I will tax the hell out of all chips coming from Taiwan Semiconductor, and I'm going to make sure that Taiwan pays for our military support over there, or we're going to leave and let China just do whatever they want. Right away, would you think that would have a positive or negative impact on the markets? If Trump said those things today, right? We're July 17th. He comes out and he says, I'm going to tax chips like crazy because they're anti-competitive to the United States. They're way cheaper and we need to make American jobs better. We're going to tax them and we're going to make them pay for our military over there. Would that be bad for the market? I think you guys all agree. Yeah, it'd be negative, right? So right away, the market starts to sell off. And look what happened today. So all of a sudden, that stuff starts to sell off. And as we get into August and September, if he keeps talking that talk track, that rhetoric, and pushes markets down, what's he going to do? He's going to look right at Biden during the campaign, and he's going to go, do you see what Biden's doing to this market? Do you see what's happening in these exchanges? Our markets are falling because it's perfect. Create all your bad stuff up front, and then blame Biden's administration for it. It's brilliant. It is absolutely brilliant, and I'm sure he got that from being on The Apprentice for so long. So, yeah, and then we'll see if he actually sticks to it once, if he is elected president. But I love watching this political stuff because he can say anything right now as bad as he wants about what he's going to do to other countries, and it could crush the markets. And he'll just go, oh, it wasn't me. It's the current administration. I had nothing to do with it. Well, Ricardo, as a trader, I'm going to call it brilliance because it's just gaming the system. Is it evil? Well, I guess it all depends on what your moral definition of evil is. It's definitely utilizing the system. But look, It's kind of like us abusing the tax code. If you are following all the rules of the tax code and you're using this little tiny, I hate using the word loophole because loophole almost feels like it's an illegal thing to use, but if you're using all of the loophole in the tax code, are you an evil person? No, you're using the system that's presented to you. And I think that his years on The Apprentice and understanding reaction, saying something shocking right before a commercial break so people don't leave, and then they come back after the commercial and you're like, oh, well, that was no big deal. I mean, you notice when he was president, he did it a lot. You notice on like a Monday, he'd say something like, I'm going to impose a 20% tariff on China. Their chips are too expensive. I want to make it huge for America. I've got to make it huge. And then markets would tank on that Friday. And then Monday morning would come around and he goes, China's great. They're a great partner. I like working with China. China's amazing. And do we think we're going to do good things with China? And then the market would soar on Monday. You know, it made me always wonder, like, were you selling short on Thursday in your family trust and covering on Monday? I don't know. It always made me wary of the information. But it's knowing your audience. It's knowing the shock and awe effect. If you're a president who just sits there and doesn't do anything, you kind of fall out of the people's eyesight. But if you're always doing shock and awe, you're always at the forefront and more people are talking about you. He's been a master at that. Drake and Kendall, Roaring Kitty. I love Roaring Kitty. I love it. Jamie Dimon will be Fed chairman under Trump's administration. Andres, could he be? I think he could. Would he want to be? I mean, honestly, would anybody here really want to be the chairman of the Fed or the SEC? Oh, you said chairman of the Fed. Yes. I think he would take that position. That's your swan song, right? When you're the chairman of the Fed, you don't work after that. You're done. You just do book signings and tours. But let's be honest. If you look at what Jamie Dimon's career has been, the guy's loaded. Hundreds of millions of dollars worth of net worth. How much is the net worth of Gary Gensler? Or actually, Gary Gensler, I'm in the wrong department. How much was the net worth of Ben Bernanke or Janet Yellen? Nowhere near Jamie Dimon. Jamie Dimon's on a whole nother level over Ben Bernanke, Greenspan, or even Janet Yellen. So, I don't know. I don't know if he'd want to be chairman of the Federal Reserve. Force the markets down to demand zones. And just see, the thing, if you have that kind of power and know that you're going to say something positive on a Monday, you can go long on a Wednesday or a Thursday after you've beaten down the markets. It's all manipulation. Yeah, Steve says Jamie Dimon banked $125 million last year alone. Crazy. Yep, I'm with you, Ricardo. I'm with you. You know, I thought I went to Italy in 2001. Was that when I went? Yeah, 2001, right before the 9/11 attacks. I went in March, I think, March or April. And I went over there with this belief system that America's politics suck. American politics are awful. I was embarrassed. I just didn't like it. And then I was there during the Italian elections, which are even more of a mess. I mean, it was chaos and horrible. So just remember, it's pretty much every country has a pretty messed up political system. Unfortunately, I don't think there's a government agency out there I look at and go, they're great. I love it. I think most of it's garbage anyway. But it's something we all have to live with. So we just kind of, put on your cap of your country and wave the flag as I do. I'm proud to be an American. I'm just not proud of my politicians. All right, anyway, let's not go politics. We went down that route. So there was I don't know how we got on that topic, but that was me giving my thoughts on buy levels for gold, which I don't really see anything that exciting on gold, but I did map out a couple levels for you there. What I see, someone talking about injective. Where was that one back there? Jeremy says, what's your prediction on injective long term? Well, I'm not a prognosticator, if you will. Let's go INJ. I don't even have it on my watch list. So let me go add an injective. Okay. I mean, look, this looks like most of the other projects out there. Terrible, right? Over the past couple months, we've seen a sell-off, significant sell-off in crypto, which I did not think was a surprise. I've been saying that I do believe after the halving, we're going to see these markets drift lower. Well, injective is certainly falling into that category, drifting lower. It was over $52, fell all the way down into $18. So a massive decline in value there. Let me give you the exact percentages here. You had a slide in injective of 68%. I'm all right with their project. I'm okay with what they do. I don't own any of it, so I don't like it that much. But long term, what's going to happen? You have this finally a breakout here of this downtrend, which is a start. Doesn't mean it's over. For me, really to be convinced, I'd have to get above this high from the 12th of June, which is going to be a high price of $32.99. So if this bad boy got to 33 bucks, great. I think you got some good legs for the future. What I do think is going to happen here, how many of you own a whole Bitcoin? How many whole coiners do we have here? I'm going to raise it. Can I raise my hand? There we go. I'm going to raise my hand. So I'm a whole coiner. How many else is a whole coiner? A whole coiner means you own at least 1.0 Bitcoin. The reason I ask is, if you look at the current situation, what's setting up politically, for those of us who are in crypto, you're starting to rub your hands a little bit like, okay, here we go. This could be big, right? This could be real big. Because you've got, again, Trump saying positive on Bitcoin. You've got his new running mate, very positive for Bitcoin, pro-Bitcoin. And you're hearing the talk track. They're talking about it more and more and more. Of course, what's that doing? I mentioned this long before Trump. We can find the episode, but I said this long before Trump came out positive for Bitcoin. I said most likely what will happen is Trump will come out positive for Bitcoin because so many young people are all in on Bitcoin. And they're going to want, he's trying to get those votes by saying that. So only me and you, Chio? We're the only whole coiners here? I think Big Ab was too. But he's not here today. You look at these price charts of crypto, and Injective is going to follow Bitcoin. That's the reality of it, right? So there you have a chart that looks pretty much like all other cryptos. And now you have Bitcoin showing some nice price appreciation. I still was in the camp that we're going to come down to this demand zone around 50,000. We may not. I'd love it if we just went to liftoff mode from here. It'd be great. That said, if Trump does win, you've got two people that are going to be setting up policy that's pro-Bitcoin. And my target for 250 on Bitcoin might be a little low. Make Bitcoin great again. I own MicroStrategy stock. Does that mean I own a whole Bitcoin? No, it doesn't. The problem there is you don't know how much Bitcoin you own. You have to figure out what the ratio of share price to Bitcoin is, and you could probably figure that out. So not a whole coiner. And remember, if you hold Bitcoin, you actually own it. If you own MicroStrategy, you don't really own Bitcoin. You don't actually own it because you don't have the private keys. It's okay, Lisa. You're not kidding. I get it. Again, I own mine, so I'm not worried about anybody taking it away. And therefore, let's go. Let's just get some more. And it doesn't have to be President Trump or whoever the president is. I hope that they're a little bit more optimistic. Again, not just for greed for myself. As you guys know, I would love it if it rallied aggressively because I would do well. But I think more importantly, it's about, why did I change the date to the 18th? It's not the 18th today. In my opinion, it's more important that it's about job creation and job retention in America. So it's not just Bitcoin. It's the whole crypto digital asset ecosystem, which keeps real world assets here. It keeps projects based in the United States. So we keep the jobs, the developers, and become the leader in that asset category. To me, that makes logical sense. While you may think it's used for illegal activities and drug deals, yes, it is on some levels, but that's a small percentage of its overall utility. If you believe that that's enough to get rid of crypto, then you should ban physical currency as well, because more currency is used for drug dealers and illegal activities than anything else on the planet. Okay, so there, Injective, I don't have a long-term target other than it's probably going to follow the markets, probably going to continue to rally. So if we get a turnaround in Bitcoin, which is the tide that floats all the boats, you should do pretty well with Injective. It's actually holding okay, but not my favorite project. I can't, Ricardo, it wasn't Bowen here. That was the same from yesterday's show. You have the wrong date. Yeah, I know. It was the 16th. My eyes are bad. I just didn't change it. I'll blame TJ. This means that you won't lose your Bitcoin exposure every Bitcoin. Yeah. While individual holders of crypto have lost a lot. Yes. Just to give you an idea. So I use this one a lot. You go to Bitcoin largest addresses. So let me bring this up for you. I actually like this one a lot. For some reason, it did not go over there. This is weird. Okay, hold on. If you type in largest Bitcoin addresses, you get this page here. It's called Bit Info Charts. And one of the things in the crypto world is they say, by the way, when I mentioned whole coiners, you can see a whole coiner would be right here. If you own a full Bitcoin, you are 1.88% of the crypto world. That's a very weird, small little number. So you should feel pretty honored if you own one or more Bitcoin, because you are now in this small little percentage of account holders. Anyway, there's a page right here that says dormant addresses. And what Tom's referencing is a very valid point. One thing that makes this a unique asset class and a scary asset class is it's called a private key. Because I own my own Bitcoin and I'm controlling every aspect of it. So this device right here has some Bitcoin on it. And I have some paper wallets that look like this that also have Bitcoin on it. Don't worry, this one doesn't have anything on it. I've taken it off. But I have Bitcoin sitting in other devices. What that means is I now need what's called a seed phrase or a private key. And if I lose that seed phrase or private key, then all my crypto disappears that's at that address. So it's a totally different, it's like you need to be your own security agent if you are going to get involved with crypto. You need to be careful with that. So the industry believes that if a Bitcoin wallet has not moved for 5 years, then that Bitcoin is deemed to be lost, meaning someone has lost their private keys, which Tom is correct. A lot of people have lost a lot of Bitcoin. Most of it's the older crowd, because not as an age, meaning the seasoned veterans of crypto. People who had wallets in 2009, 10, 11. A lot of that could be lost because no one thought it would really be anything. So take a peek at this. I'll click on 5. This tells you right here how many wallets have not moved in 5 years. That's 6.53 million Bitcoin have not moved. Now, if you think about it, right now there's almost 20 million in circulation. The most there will ever be is 21 million. That means that a good portion of Bitcoin is already gone, lost. And of course, every time a Bitcoin is lost, that drives up price because you're taking away supplies. So right now, if you were to do a simple calculation here, and I'll bring this calculator over here for you guys, and let's say we'll just do the overall total balance of 21 million Bitcoin, and we take out of that equation, what did I say, 6.5? All right, that's minus 6.5. There's only 14.5 million Bitcoin that can actually be traded, bought, and sold. Now, what if we think 5's maybe a little too little, maybe go 7 years? Well, if you go 7 years, that's still 4.27 million Bitcoin lost, gone, will never be retrieved again. Merlin, I believe those addresses belong to the government. No, I don't think so. There's actually a really good one down here. Oh, I wish I could remember where it was at. Is it this guy right here? It might be the 4th largest Bitcoin wallet. Every time I look at this one, my jaw just drops. It goes back to 2011 when this thing was created and hasn't moved since. Let's see. Yes, this is probably the most crazy thing you're going to see today. You're going to go home and talk about this. Hey, JB, good to see you. You're going to go home and tell someone about this. You guys see the date right here? This is 2010, April 5th of 2010. Somebody bought 28,000 Bitcoin. 28,000 Bitcoin in 2010, all right? And I'm going to scroll all the way down here to the beginning just so you can see how much it's worth. 28,000 Bitcoin. There wasn't even a price on this thing. $8.09 is actually what the price was back in 2012. But for somebody kept adding in here. You can see it started off in April with 2,000 Bitcoin. They had another 2,000. My guess this is a miner who just was making money and just kind of put it in there. Here's another 2,000, 2,000. So ultimately now, right here, as of 2012, there's 28,150 Bitcoin. That was worth $227,000, which at the time, you're like, that is a ton of money. Oh my gosh, a lot. But look, nothing's happened. I believe this person has lost their private key. It is now, because nothing has changed. There has been one addition, nothing happened here for the last 12 years. Could you imagine if you had $227,000 worth of Bitcoin, most of which you got at a much earlier price, so we probably got it when it was like a couple cents, but now $1.8 billion. And could you imagine if you lost your private key and every day you just look at that wallet going, I cannot believe I'm a billionaire. I'm worth $1.8 billion, but I can never access that money. Could you imagine? Oh my goodness, I would lose my mind. I'd go crazy. I would go absolutely bonkers. Anyway, yeah, that's one to make your day. That's a wallet that my guess is probably dormant. It's dead, and someone lost their private key. Yeah, hating life might be a... Dude probably has a mortgage. Oh, the irony, right? The guy could be buying, hotels and just $1.8 billion. Your life is a completely different world, and he probably can't access this money. Anyway, this website's pretty cool if you want to just play around with it. I like doing it just because there's so much I've learned about wallet distribution. I'll copy it and paste it over here. Is there any way to retrieve it? The answer is an absolute no. No. There's no way to retrieve it. So the way that you could retrieve it, so is there a way? Sure. There is always a way. And your way, I believe, is 10 to the 48th power. So here's what you'd have to do is you'd have to guess the key that opens, where was that one? This is the largest dormant addresses. Hold on, dormant bin open addresses. You would have to guess the key that opened that wallet. Now here's another one. This one's worth $5.13 billion. And you can see here, this one was moved over in 2011. So that was way more. At the very beginning, this account, everybody, just so you can see the exact numbers here. Bear with me, it's taking a lot. Hold on, I know it's hard to read. Sorry. There you go. So on November 3rd, March 1st of 2011, this individual moved over 79,000 Bitcoin, which at the time was $74,000. This may be the greatest trade in the history of mankind. So $74,000, what he put in, it was 93 cents a Bitcoin. That $74,000 has turned into $5.1 billion, and it has not moved in 13 years. My guess, this is also a lost Bitcoin account. So there is no way to get that wallet. The only way you could do that, and I don't know if it'll let me do that here. Let's see. It's 10 to the 48th power. Oh, it won't let me stretch it out. It's 1 with 48 zeros after it. And Ricardo says, I will crack it with quantum computers. They've already tried. They can't. Margaret lost, so the person died. Yeah, I'll tell you what. If you know someone, close family friend that's passed away, always dig around and look and see if you see anything that looks like this. QR codes or long addresses that start with a 1H or a 1B, right? These long number string of characters. It may be a private key. I think there's a lot of people that have passed away with these wallets and just don't know. People just don't know because I didn't have it very clearly documented until I got COVID in 2020. Then I documented everything and made it clear. So if someone were to find me and I would be passed away, unfortunately, they would be able to recover those assets. I did make a little bit of a game out of it, so you wouldn't be able to get it automatically. There's a couple little things you'd have to do, but I won't tell you what those are. Okay, that is your Wednesday show. I'm going to run out of here, and let's go and show you what is up for mañana. Actually, we didn't even look at the markets for today. So as far as NASDAQ goes, I love it. I hope it tanks more. I would like to be a buyer of NASDAQ. And the 19,000, if you're looking at NQ, I'll almost like to be trading triple Qs. Right, so you've got a couple different spots. One that in particular to me is going to be right around 463. It's still a long ways away, but if premium gets ripe enough, I'll look to buy that 460 or sell those 463s on it. Pretty nice down day for our broad markets, as you guys obviously experienced today. 2.92% for the NASDAQ. Bitcoin is down 1.1%, although nothing really, just kind of gave back a little bit of yesterday's gains. Your S&P down as well. The question is, do we get down and get a retracement into that yellow box, into that origin of the breakout? My guess is we probably will. I think it's long overdue to have a decent correction, something more than 2 or 3%. Let's get a 5, 6, 8% correction in these markets and use that as a buying opportunity to get back in the trend. Russell finally took a little bit of a breather right at that supply zone that we smacked into yesterday. It did jump above it and then sold off just a little bit here. I don't know if that's going to continue on, although the profit taking's got to come in here. I feel like this was just manipulated. It was down 1.02%. The dollar index, this is the story of the day. I was actually going to make this the story of the day. You have a breakdown below this yellow box. That's pretty important. That means most likely this dollar is going to continue to drop, and maybe tomorrow I'll bring up and do a show more on the dollar relationships, looking at Forex and different currencies and how that dollar might impact these markets going overall. So I think I'll probably do that tomorrow. And let's see, gold, third place. We talked about this one already. Slightly down, just a little bit of a reprieve after that breakout. The 10-year, Big Eb's not even on the show. He's probably celebrating. 10-year dropped a little bit today, but yesterday was kind of that important one for Big Eb because it dropped below that 4.18 mark, and that is what was holding this all up. And now all of a sudden it broke, which means he might be targeting that 4% mark here for the 10-year. And finally, crude oil, 2.59% pop to the upside. This is a total head fake through that demand zone there, although it bottomed out back here on this one. Don't forget the like button. Merlin, can someone retrieve from a Bitcoin wallet? No, and only if they have the private key or the seed phrase. It's the only way you can get it. Your odds are greater of finding a specific grain of sand at some beach in the world, and the beach is covered underneath 100 feet of sand. That's pretty much the equivalent of it from a statistical probability. You're not going to guess a private key that opens that wallet. It's just not going to happen. So no, nobody can do it. No one, not even quantum computing. If they can crack the algorithm, which is SHA-256, if they can crack that encryption mechanism, then maybe. But that's so far down the road. They're saying it could be if you try to do it through quantum computing today, it'd take over 1,000 years to target a specific address. All right, tomorrow, what time we got? Dang, I did not want to do an hour show today. Here we go. Today you had some pretty decent earnings out there. Alcoa and Johnson & Johnson, two of the notable ones. Big beats there. You also had Synchrony Financial. For tomorrow, it's your big day. I don't have my popcorn trade of the day. Oh, my graphics are gone. What am I going to do? You have Netflix tomorrow, which is probably your most exciting one after market close. You got Blackstone Group, Intuitive Surgical, Abbott Labs, Nokia, and that's pretty much it. Novartis and Alaskan Air keeping up with the airline companies today. And then as far as economic announcements for Thursday, here's what you got. The European Union is the big focal point. That's going to be at 5:15 in the morning when they come out with their rate announcement. All expectations are right now they're staying at 4.25%. And for the U.S., really not much. Natural gas storage, TIC long-term purchases, and a couple of FOMC members speaking, and that will be it. All right, I almost made it an hour. I'm going to cut out of here before I get to that 0-0 mark. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you have any comments, questions, things you want me to cover on tomorrow's show, email me, TraderMerlin@gmail.com. I will do that, or go down below the YouTube video, comment there. That's usually where I go first to get the questions, so send them in at underneath any of the YouTube videos, and I'll get them from there. So thank you guys so much. Have a fantastic remainder of your day. See you tomorrow.